Hit it.
Okay. I have to loosen myself up. You like how flowy I look today? This cardigan. I'm going to show you this. This cardigan.
Ooh, it's a long one. I love the long cardies.
I got this in the women's section at Walmart. It is a 2XL.
Oh,
and
well,
there were
even
women
better.
in the women's section watching me try on all these cardigans. And I just looked at one of them and said, "Oh yeah, I'm buying this for me."
No judgment.
No, well, there was judgment from, but it's okay. I am a big fan of the plus size lady cardigans. They suit me, I think.
See, I'd still like to shop in the maternity section sometimes because they have some really comfy clothing. Not gonna lie, those elastic waistbands that are nice and wide.
Well, I get a lot of compliments on my lady card. It has pockets.
I know. That's why I love it. I have two, one in gray and one in like a tan color. Anyway, we're digressing. Okay. I love your lady sweater.
Well, thank you.
You Lady Cotty.
Lady Cotty. Welcome to the True North podcast, where two practicing light workers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can live as your true self and follow your true north. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Abby.
I feel like you took that drink just for me.
I did.
You're like, see, I'm doing the thing. I'm doing the thing. Don't get thrown off.
Wanted to help your flow, so I took the drink while you were doing the intro.
It's now becoming customary for us to talk about your drinking habits immediately after the intro.
That's exciting.
Is it? What do you want to talk about today? Do you have stuff?
I do, but I want to see, what's going on in your world. If you want to start out with anything, because yes, I have stuff. I definitely have stuff today.
What is going on in my world that I can bring to the podcast? Well, I do have something. I'm wary about. It may just take over the whole episode. But you and I were sitting at coffee the last time we sat down for coffee, and I went on this rant, and you listened, and then you said, "If you could talk like that on the podcast, then we could take over the world." But the we wasn't you and I. The we was women. Do you remember this?
Yes. Yes, I do. So tell us.
I don't know that I want to go straight there yet because that's like way. I was talking about the moon and planets and shit, but I did have an experience recently, a parenting experience. And it was one of those things where you have an experience and you think, maybe I should talk about that on the podcast. And the second you have that thought, like 9 other things happen to the same in the same direction where the universe is like, yes, you should talk about this, you should talk about this. And it was kind of what would seem like an innocuous event. My goddaughter was over and my son wanted to play with her, but she wanted to sit on the love seat and watch videos, YouTube, TikTok, something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my son, he why do I keep on saying my son? We all know his name. Bricks walked over to her and just kind of dove on her. And we had a parent-teacher conference with our kid teacher at preschool the other day, and she mentioned that, like, she called him the human cannonball and told us that the closest thing she has to, like, a behavioral problem with him is that when there's a mob of kids all doing something and he wants to do it with them, he doesn't, like, approach the group and ask if someone can make space. He literally just dives in. Like... Mm-hmm. Physically, head first, crowd surf style, dives into the mob, and then someone ends up crying or hurt or whatever, and so they're like trying to teach him, how to be a human. But he does that. He just decides he wants to be in someone's space, and then he just enters their space like a human cannonball. And so he did this with her, and it wasn't the most comfortable experience. She was like, "Ow, get off!" and he didn't listen. So we stopped, pulled him back, and said, "Before you invade somebody's space, you need to ask them if you can hang out with them and ask them if you can snuggle with them." So he did, and she said no, and then he did it anyway, and then she laughed because it was all cute and kind of innocent, and then so she said, "Okay, fine, you can snuggle with me," and that was fine for the other adults in the room, and it was not fine for me, because what I saw happen was a little boy wanted to invade this space of a little girl. He wanted to have some type of like physical interaction that she didn't want, and she said no. And he ignored the no, steamrolled the no, and turned it into a yes through persistence. And that one little tiny mechanism, while innocuous when it comes to, two kids who, for all intents and purposes, have a sibling relationship, that same thing transposed into other settings can be extremely dangerous and hurtful and traumatic for people. And so I kind of like pulled him off. I was like, no, she said no. I know she said yes, but that was after she said no and you didn't hear the no. So you need to have this, you need to respect this boundary. And you cannot climb on her right now. Even though she said, okay, fine. That doesn't count. And he was fine. Like, he was just like, he's a toddler, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go do something else. And she didn't really, and I went to her. And I was like, you don't ever have to turn your no into a yes. Like, good job saying no. Some people don't even make it that far. Some people feel obligated to give a yes, right? And so you just said no. That's great. But you can hold on to that no. You can say no again. You can say no louder. You can, like, you don't have to turn your no into a yes just because someone doesn't listen to it. And I was so adamant about this. The look on her face was like she thought she was in trouble.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I was fighting back like some real emotion because, of course, that whole situation is loaded for me with a bunch of things that she hasn't even been introduced to yet, that he hasn't even been introduced to yet. And it's normalized, and we think that because it's an innocent setting, then it's okay to just not pay attention to it. But then if we don't, then that thing becomes not innocent really quickly. And I don't know. Going back to our Thanksgiving episode, I think what really, the nerve that it hits for me is this idea, which kind of applies to colonialism, but it's this idea that if you have something I want, and I have more power than you, then it's not really yours, is it? Like, I even watch it, like, we did this as kids. I watched, two of my godkids, one phone. This was a different experience, different time. One kid had the phone, the other kid wanted the phone. Said, give me the phone. Kid with the phone said no. Kid who wanted the phone was stronger than the kid who had the phone, so kid who wanted the phone took the phone. Kid who then lost the phone shrugged and went off to go do something else. If you have something I want and I'm stronger than you, then I can just have it.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And it's not okay. And my bigger thing with Bricks is that he is a male. At least physically presents as a male right now. And our system teaches males that there is little to no consequence for that behavior. Like, males get away with that. We just do. There's nothing like embedded into our society that really just like at a base core fundamental level tells you as a guy that that's not okay. It tells you that if you're a guy, you can get away with it. It's okay. Everybody else should adjust around your freedom to exert your will. And that is a problem. And I found myself I didn't have to like defend this to the other adults in the room who were okay with the no that had turned into a yes. But I explained it anyway. And I just said, if we don't teach him this, no one else will. Right. Our culture, when it comes to women, our culture has very, very specific prescriptions for how to be. And when to be certain ways, and what you should and shouldn't be, and it's a knife's edge. And if you fall off of that a little bit, you get eaten alive for it. And it's not even a good set of standards. It's defined by like what men want you to be. But men, there is no path to walk. There is no guardrail to stay inside, or else there's consequence. There are no consequences. I mean, that's what the whole Me Too movement was. It was like, hey, there should be consequences for you acting the way you're acting and doing the thing you're doing and thinking it's okay to turn a no into a yes.
So not that I want to stop you, but I just want to throw this in there. I read something that kind of along this topic where the women that do ultimately say yes are almost misogynistic themselves, whether they're aware of it or not. Because they also allow it to happen. I'm not saying I agree with that. This is interesting. I read that and it struck me in a horrible way. So I'm throwing it out there.
Well, that's so tricky because I've talked to women who have been in that situation where they put up a no and then they defended it and then they were met with persistence and eventually just said, okay, fine.
Well, I've been in a situation where I have put up a no, I have put up a fight, and no was not an answer that was going to be taken.
Right.
Like it wasn't, I just like, okay, I'll give in. It was just taken.
Right. But does that make...
But that doesn't necessarily make me a misogynist because it happened.
Right. But even if you had just said, okay, fine, there's no way I'm going to win this fight, so just do what you want. Like, even if you had turned that no into a yes, I don't think that would have made you a misogynist for...
No. But I like where you're going with this conversation, because I think the point that the author was trying to make is that we all, to some degree, have misogyny inside of us, right? And it's like, what are you doing? Yes, it is exactly what you're saying. We are conditioned. That's the culture that we live in, and we've just all accepted. All of us have accepted it for so long. And there are some that, like all the Me Too organizers, the people that started this in the first place, like, are finally fed up with it and they're doing something. But that doesn't mean that they haven't experienced that or don't have that within them themselves, because at some point they've condoned it, because that may mean they would have lost a job. They, like,
right. There are like, we position women in we back them into the corner where if you continue to say no to this, you're going to start losing some very real important things. It's just easier for you and everybody else if you just say yes.
Yes.
And that's bullshit. And I think the thing that really irks me about that is, like you're saying, we've normalized it.
Yes. Yes, we have.
And that is heartbreaking. Mm-hmm.
It is for my son. It's heartbreaking for my son. It's heartbreaking for your son. Because we are trying to raise men that this is not the standard. This is not the norm. This is not accepted. And how do you do that in this world? It's incredibly difficult.
Right.
I mean, I was afraid. When I found out I was having a boy, I was terrified, because you know how I feel about men. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my God, now I have to raise one. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you've heard me say this before, and it's kind of a funny thing, but literally, like, you're the only real man in my life I have a relationship with. And I think it's because of the very thing that you're saying right now. Like, you get it. You completely get it. So I want to read this quote. This is funny. I didn't plan on doing this, but I have this out for other reasons, but it's very applicable to this topic right now. So it's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. I am a big fan of the transcendentalist movement completely, but he writes, your genuine action will explain itself and will explain your other genuine actions. Your conformity explains nothing.
Say that again.
Your genuine action will explain itself and will explain your other genuine actions. Your conformity explains nothing.
What does that mean to you? What does that stick to for you?
Well, on this particular topic, your conformity explains nothing basically means I know I'm aware of it happening. And it's like, if I'm aware of it happening and I'm conforming to it, I'm complicit. I'm just like, yep, I want that job. So sure, I'll do what I need to do, and not try to change the culture, not try to change the environment, then who does that make me? Does that make me the misogynist as well?
Right. Or does it at least make you're playing into it? Right.
But then where does the bravery and the courage come into play, though, to actually have genuine action against that? Because my actions do speak, whether it's me not saying something, not taking that job, whatever. But I feel like we're so far off the grid that doing that could be detrimental, right?
Right. Well, it could be detrimental to you. It could bring real pain. It could, whoever's trying to get whatever they want out of you could just try harder to the detriment of your health or your safety. Right. And so a lot of times, when people go with it, it's just a matter of safety.
Well, that's why I love the Me Too movement so much. Even though, I'll raise my hand. Me too. But I think what I love so much about it is that it's that strength in numbers. Like, it's finally enough people so that when that power tries to push back, that strength in numbers is just getting to be too strong, where the scales are going to start tipping.
Right. And there was this really interesting thing that I watched happen, where a lot of the men who were very guilty of committing a lot of these types of assaults on a regular basis. And you hear that within their industry, everybody knew that it was going on, but nobody said anything because it would have been one voice. Any one voice is easy to squash, but like you're saying, all the voices together, you can't ignore that. And so then people started coming out of the woodworks and talking about their experiences with these guys. And then the defenders of these guys would say, hey, you're trying to tarnish his reputation.
Yeah, right.
And then I don't remember who it was. I want to find attribution. It was circulated so many times by so many people, but someone came out and said, we're not tarnishing reputations. We are correcting them. And you could feel the power in that statement. And you could feel that person felt empowered to say that because of this symphony of voices behind them. And I think to your question, how do you change it? Well, that's what it is. It's not enough to be fed up. You have to be fed up together and loudly.
Yes. And that's why I love this quote, your genuine action will explain itself. If your intentions are good to change that culture and you collectively come together to change that consciousness, I do think there will be a shift.
Right. And I think this is where allyship comes from.
Yes.
Again, I didn't voice this very well in the last episode, but I am constantly hyper aware of the impacts of myself and the people groups that I belong to and the effects of all the other people groups because I belong to all the ones that happen to be the oppressors. White, straight, cisgendered, male, all of it. And so that's what it means to citizen to me, is to constantly be scrutinizing what I do and how does it affect who's marginalized, who's hurt, who suffers at the hands of X, Y, or Z, and then what does it look like to be an ally for those people? Because then, for me, what that means is, like with race relations, it's try to bring black voices into the room, but also be a voice for them when there aren't any there. When it comes to LGBTQ people and talking to religious people about it, bring queer folks into the room, but if I can't, be their voice when they're not there. And in the same way, I think the Me Too movement needs men to be the voice of women in the room where there aren't women.
I agree.
I worked in corporate America, and there were so many meetings where there just weren't women. And decisions were being made that affected the lives of women. And they just weren't in the room. And I found myself being the person to say, how does this affect the women? And the looks you get as a man in a room full of men saying you would expect a woman to say that. But it makes a difference to the men who need to hear it when a man is the one that says it. Not because men's voices are more powerful or, any of that stuff. I don't want to come off as being misogynist, like it only counts if a man says it. But the men who need to hear the Me Too message, by definition, are going to put more weight on the voices of men. And so the men who are with the Me Too movement need to keep it going.
It's like you're fighting fire with fire is what you're saying.
Yes.
Which is what you have to do. To fight a wildfire, you have to add fire to it. So to get the men to listen, you need other men to speak about it.
Right. And I think while attacking it on that front, it goes back to our kids. It goes back to our sons. It goes back to the little tiny moments that don't do any damage, but the exact same mechanism at play in that moment translated into something else that can do damage. You need to be doing that now. It's just like driving. Like my brother was very responsible his entire life, and my parents did not have any qualms about giving him the keys to their car. He had never driven before, but he had a track record of being responsible in non-driving matters to the point where his life and the lives of other people are at stake. The stakes are higher. Potential for damage is greater. But they knew that he had showed responsibility to the point where they could trust him with this new thing that could hurt people. And I was very much a loose cannon in the antithesis of my brother in almost every way. And I wrecked a couple of my parents' cars and a couple of my own. And it was always a tricky thing for them to imagine what would it look like to have Ryan behind a wheel. And it was a different thing because I didn't have that track record of being generally responsible. And in the same way, I feel like, Brix is a 2-year-old who's wearing 4T clothing. The kid is stocky. I could just see him growing up into being somebody who can physically exert his will on just about anybody. And by the time he's able to do damage in that world, that's not the time to start teaching him how not to.
Right. Yes.
And so now is the time to teach him if your god sister does not want you to snuggle with her, you respect that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Do not make her change it to make you stop persisting.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yes. I am really struggling to find male role models for my son. Obviously, we're a 2-women household. There's only so much I can say, but it's like still speaking to this point, like I need a man to kind of also show him and guide him in doing this. And I'm constantly seeking out males in my life that can role model exactly that, exactly what you're saying, how to treat a woman, how to do just humanity, but we are on this topic. Yes, how to respect the boundaries of a female.
Right. And like, I don't want to just like jump into some gender binary thing, because I know that there's some gender fluid people that listen to this.
Right.
And it's not just about men versus women. It really comes down to people respecting people. But it's kind of like
Yes.
the Black Lives Matter movement, where, all lives matter, but the black ones are the ones that the system is rigged to act like they don't.
Yes.
And in the same way, there's a very specific male to female dynamic that is especially problematic. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to be fixed by women talking about the experiences they're having. That's going to be fixed by men. Stop giving him those fucking experiences to talk about.
Yes.
It's not hard. But what that means is there needs to be consequence built into, like, there needs to be repercussions. Mm-hmm. And that's what goes back to my original point, is right now there's guys getting away with stuff that we shouldn't get away with. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking, like, we went straight to like sexual assault because it's that's where this conversation leads, but I'm talking about like carrying the emotional labor of upholding a house. I know so many women who talk to me about their husbands who just don't take care of shit because they know that if they don't, someone else will. But someone else is your wife.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? And so then she gets the option to either try to wrestle you into doing a thing, which takes a lot of emotional energy for her and a lot of relational stress, right?
Yeah.
Or do it herself, which is all the physical labor of doing all the things, or just live with it not getting done, which then is a whole nother layer of stress, because if you value cleanliness and they don't, it's a lose-lose-lose situation for the wife, and that whole thing is normalized to the point where it is now expected that she will just shoulder the load. Mm-hmm. It is expected. That is the norm. Where he can come home, he's done his work for the day, he can kick off his shoes and relax, and then she'll do all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. Even if she has a job, her own job.
Right.
And that right there plays into what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Where if she doesn't get the luxury of saying, if I don't do it, someone else will do it. Mm-hmm. So she just does it because y'all are badasses.
Well, thanks for that. But even in lesbian relationships and female relationships, do you know that we still get asked the question, who's the man in the who's in the relationship? Yes,
I've heard that is a question that people get all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
So what is that like for you? Like, how do you what is this? Because we're talking about male female dynamics. I'm talking to hetero people, but like, how does this resonate with your relationship at all?
Well, I've got to be careful here so I don't air any dirty laundry.
That's true.
But yeah, we have quote unquote gender roles that do happen within our relationship, and it's always bothered me, I guess, but I don't know what you do.
And here's the deal. I'll save you from having to disclose stuff about stories people who are not you. But what I've kind of gathered watching this from the periphery is when people ask that, A, it seems like they're just trying to fit you into their mold. Like, how do I understand you better? How do I make your relationship look like my relationship?
Right.
Right. But then B, there is definitely, I don't even want to get into like masculine energy and feminine energy, but there are the roles. Mm-hmm. There are the roles of how you show up in the household. Yeah. And in hetero relationships, generally speaking, the men tend to adopt one role and the women tend to adopt another role.
But that's part of that conditioning that we're talking about.
And so I think when they're asking you that, is it more like, what role do you play?
Yes. And it doesn't always bother me because for a lot of times it really is just people trying to understand us because we may be the first, and I've had someone tell this to me, you're the first gay person I've ever met. And so I know that they're trying to literally understand me. And the fact that you're even trying that on for size makes me okay answering that question for you. Right?
Sure.
Because then, you're using the knowledge that you have available to you. You know nothing else but what those particular roles. And so let's start there. Because if you're willing to start there, then we can have other conversations, right?
Sure.
So most of the time I'm like fairly good with answering it. But then sometimes, perfect example, we get this question a lot from males when they want to know how it works in the bedroom. We always get the sex question from a man, and it's like it's covered in like, well, who wears the pants in the family, and that sort of implies
but they're really
who does
asking,
what.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm just like, okay.
That's when you get to set those boundaries and keep them.
Yeah.
I mean, I have
so
asked that question to a handful of lesbians after building a several year-long relationship with them, where it's not even just like, I'm so curious. It's just like we're friends and we're open with each other. And I also have sex conversations with my straight friends. Like, eventually you get to a point in a friendship where it just comes down to sex. And it's always like, hey, we're comfortable enough with you, and I'm really curious, and you're the only person I feel like I can ask without triggering or something like that. And I find that it varies as much as it does in hetero relationships. Like, it's not even really that interesting of a question because it's
not.
It's not. It's just use your imagination.
It's not. But I guess I do see. I'd meet people where they are, and so for the most part, because I read people so well, I know exactly what they're asking and where they're coming from. And if it's a matter of trying to understand me as a human, as another person showing up, and them, like I said, just knowing the only thing that they have to help figure that out, then that's great. But it's like, Christy, my wife, is definitely more masculine energy driven, right? She's got the short hair. She wears male clothes. She's feminine in many ways, but by just first looks, she's very male looking. I mean, she gets called sir a lot when people just aren't really paying attention. So then, of course, we have a child together, and everybody makes the assumption that I had the child.
Right.
Because I am the quote unquote girl,
right,
female in the relationship, and I'm like, well, she could have easily had the kid. Like,
right. She's got all the equipment.
Why was it me?
Right. Because you wear makeup and have long hair. That's what it takes to be the childbearer. Yeah.
I mean,
again, we're trying to fit you into our straight mold. Like, how do I frame this so that I can understand it within my limited scope of what relationship should be?
Right. But then, coming back to what we're talking about, though, is like, why do you have that mold in the first place? And it's because that's what we've been teaching. Like, this is all they know because this is all we live. This is all we breathe.
Right. And I think that it generates curiosity, but because it's different. But it's different because, like, I kind of went into a little bit of preparation for this episode because I don't like doing a thing where I look up a fact and then I spout it out 5 minutes later as though I've known it my whole life. So I try to just come with what I know. But from what I've learned about the roots of what marriage even is, it is rooted in women being property.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Rooted in it. You are my thing. And I cannot tell you how many women will tell me that their husband will compliment them. Like, compliment their appearance. Say you look really pretty, whatever. But the women feel there's a sense of, I own you. You're my favorite trophy on the shelf.
I now need to show up like this all the time.
There is that energy to it that guys don't even realize they have. It's I mean, but think about, like, okay, so I don't want to just, like, rail on the patriarchy the whole time without actionables, but think about this. You were asked, who wears the pants? Does anyone ever ask you who wears the dress?
No.
Who's the man?
Of course not.
Not who's the woman. Who's the man? Right? And I even know gay guys. Gay guys. I know gay guys.
Gay guys.
Gay guys. I know gay guys who get asked the same question, who wears the pants? And one of my favorite, like, little one-frame webtoons I've ever seen was a spoon and a fork talking to another set of cutlery saying, which one of you is the fork? And they're talking to a pair of chopsticks.
Yeah.
How perfect is that?
It's so perfect.
But it's always who is the man. Our language, oh man, oh boy, oh brother.
Yep. You guys.
Right? You guys. And then, like, and so one of the things is that I like to do is I like to find the places where my language patterns gravitate towards the masculine, and then just shift it to the feminine. And my favorite thing to do that is with God. If I ever use a pronoun for God, it's going to be a she. And that right there tells so much about the person I'm talking to, because there's a certain type of person who's going to respond only to that thing. Forget the rest of the sentence. You said God's a she. What's going on there? Mm-hmm. And then we get to the does the Bible say anything about God's genitalia? What's going on here? And then why is God a male? Why? And then and then we're off to the races. But just taking that one little word and turning it from a he to a she makes all the difference. And then noticing how many times our the things that we do, the life that we have, the things that we don't even think about, are rooted in this idea that male is normal and female is like the expansion pack. And then just notice those, and then change the way you talk. It is crazy how much of a shift can happen in your attention and the attention of the people you talk to when you change your language from something that is male-centric. Although saying "oh sister," sometimes it doesn't work. But still being aware of it keeps me from saying "oh brother" or "oh boy" or "oh man."
That's why I just say "oh shit."
Oh shit! Something a little bit more gender neutral. Everybody shits. Guys, girls, everything in between. That's what cuss words are for. It's to bring down the patriarchy.
Can I want to point something out, because I raised my hand a few minutes ago, because this is what I was trying to explain in our Thanksgiving episode, and I didn't really want to go down that rabbit hole, and I don't want to derail us, but if I don't tell you this now, it's not okay. So Thanksgiving,
yeah.
You have, that was kind of the beginning of our last episode where, you were talking about not celebrating Thanksgiving because of how it was created and whatever. And so you're going to change that, whether it not be the same type of food or whatever it is. And I struggled with that because I feel like, things while I have a very clear understanding of how Thanksgiving started, that is not what it is for me. Mm-hmm. And how I celebrate it, I feel like it's evolved in a way. It's, something good that came out of something so horrific. But now here we are, you're talking about marriage, and marriage being rooted in owning a woman, and you are a married man. So, I just want to have this conversation at some point where we talk about the things in history that make absolutely no sense now. Where is that line, right? Because you're talking about being this activist for Thanksgiving. It's more than that. I'm totally generalizing because I'm trying to quickly get through this. But the same thing can then be said, well, if we're going to not do Thanksgiving anymore, then men should no longer be married to women. Because that started as owning.
Yes. And I think maybe I came across as making that argument where you look at the origins of the thing, and then that should completely dictate how your relationship with it should be now. But I mean, going back to language, we use so many words that we don't mean the way that they were intended.
Yeah.
You trace words back to their origin, and you won't even have a language anymore if you decide to throw everything out that changed, or throw everything out that's awful. People don't use the word rule of thumb anymore because they're learning that phrase comes from a rule back in some time frame when there was a rule about the size of a stick you could use to beat your wife based on the size of your thumb. So that's, and sometimes that works. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail, but okay, well, what were you just saying? Oh, but really the thing that I was trying to say was incorporate the origins into your awareness of the thing. Mm-hmm. When it comes down to marriage, you want to get married to somebody. You want to have a wedding ceremony. Be mindful of the contents of that ceremony and why they are the way they are. Who gives this bride to the husband? The father gives the bride. The father walks the bride down the aisle. She's wearing a white dress because it's rooted in the fact that she saved her virginity for him. He doesn't have to save his virginity for her. No one, his mom isn't giving him away to her, right? And so if you remember and realize and recognize those things, you get to actively make the choice about whether you're going to perpetuate the thing or not. Not that there's guilt or judgment or a right or wrong answer, but just go through it mindfully and have a better reason for doing it than this is the way it's always been done.
Right.
That's the point I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with marriage. Marriage is not a wedding, but there's a bunch of stuff in a wedding that's deeply misogynistic, that is communicating deeply that women are property for a man to trade to a man. You are a cow, you are land, you are money, you're on par with all those things. Mm-hmm. And so for human beings to go through a ceremony that's tied to that in some way keeps that idea alive. And that's the first moment that you two are joined in marriage. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying you're not woke if you do. I'm not saying that you're a misogynist. But at least do it knowing that that's what you're communicating. Those are the steps you're going through. And if you can do it, do it. But it's the lack of being informed and the lack of being mindful that gets to me. Mm-hmm. Not just in Thanksgiving or in weddings, but in anything.
Right.
And so then that's where you really dig into the question of how to uproot the patriarchy, is to find where it is. Not just where it is, but where it's normalized. Mm-hmm. How much of our way of life is centered around that idea. And then once you have that understanding, what can you do about it? Can you make a shift? Can you make a change? Can you bring it up over the dinner table when relatives come to visit? Do you want to turn it into a soapbox? Do you want to turn it into the hill you're going to die on? You want to take it to Facebook and debate some misogynists? I don't know. But you now get the choice of what you're going to do with that information.
Mm-hmm. I like to think of things like this in terms of parenting, and I didn't really make this connection until I was a parent. And again, this is not a parenting show, but I just try to imagine, like, how would I want to teach this to my son? Mm-hmm. If I just tell him, he's going to have no reference.
Right.
He's going to have no understanding of it. And so it's going to go in one ear and out the other. Even if I explain it to the best of my ability, he has no reference. And so it's like, okay, can't tell him. All right, well, I could yell at him. I could scream at him. I could somehow pound it into his way in a very emotionally unstable way and scare the crap out of him to get him to comply, right? That's not going to happen. That's not reasonable in any way, shape, or form. It's not humanistic and anyway. Or I could just model it.
Right.
But while modeling it, also talking about it. Not just model it, because I want to model it, but I want to make sure that you see what I'm doing. So we're going to talk about, like right now, the season of giving, we're talking a lot about who we want to give to, this year. And so he's in on the conversation. And so not only are we talking about giving and who we want to give to, like food banks, and why that's even more important this year than many other years. It's always important, but there's just so many more people right now without work that need food and other things. And so kids, that's something you can relate to, kids that don't have things. So we talk about that. So there's that talking piece, but then we're also doing it, right? And so I think that's really where you need to start, is like exactly where you said. Start within yourself of just being mindful, and then just be like, yeah, we're going to get married, but Dad, you're not walking me down the aisle.
Right.
Right there. Start there.
Right.
And people are going to be like, why isn't your dad walking you down the aisle?
And there you go. Now we're off to the races. And it never has to be big stuff. In fact, the bigger the thing is, the more subject you are to pushback and people just closing down to you because it's threatening to them. Right? It's little things. Like, another thing I do is I like, Brooks watches a bunch of kids shows. And what I'll engage in this practice of telling myself a synopsis of the plot or the premise of the show, boiling it all down to just the genders presented in the characters. Paw Patrol, a team of six boys and one girl, led by a boy, to save the world from disasters usually caused by a boy, or another boy, or another boy. Right?
Yep.
What the fuck?
Yep.
You do that. Like, there's something called the Bechdel Test. Any movie, TV show, whatever, it's 3 questions. 1, is there more than one female?
The Bechdel Test?
Bechdel. There was a researcher, his last name is Bechdel, Bechdel, I think. I don't remember the how to spell it, but we'll put it in the show notes. First question, is there more than one woman? Second question, do they ever talk to each other without a man present? Third question, do they ever talk to each other about things that are not the men? Now think about that. That right there sounds radical. Yeah, there are.
That fits in that category.
There are. We watched, the animated Voltron is the first thing that comes to mind. The one that DreamWorks did for Netflix. Passes it with flying colors. But here's the thing. I asked those 3 questions, and that right there sounds radical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
Now, think about this. In a 90-minute feature film, the only thing you have to do to pass the Bechdel test is have 2 women who have one conversation about anything other than a man. And that makes your screenplay woke from a feminist perspective.
One scene.
That's all it takes.
Where we can talk about getting a manicure. And
right.
That's it.
Right. That's all it takes for you to be more woman-friendly and feminist-minded than 99% of other stories out there. That's all it takes. Small stuff. And you can Bechdel test the shit out of stuff, and then guess what? You have a kid, you still have the ability to curate what they take in and what they don't. Well, then that's something you can do to combat this patriarchal foundation upon which our society is built. It's not huge, but it turns into something huge when the life of your child starts to have ripple effects in the rest of the world.
Well, that's just it. I mean, you may feel like, okay, I have one child. I'm just doing this with my one child. But if you do it, and then your neighbor does it, and then your other friend does it, and then that's affecting your kids, and your kids start, it's like bird by bird, right? We're just changing it bird by bird.
Right. And it's one of those things where it opens people up to rethink just one little tiny thing, and that's not threatening. It welcomes people's curiosity because people will genuinely say, you say Black Lives Matter, people are not gonna ask you, why do you think Black Lives Matter?
Exactly.
But if you say I don't let my kids watch Paw Patrol, well, why not? Well, because there's one fucking woman in the entire thing. Or and you can pick different levels of intensity here too. It's all you. It's all self-governed. We used to watch Puppy Dog Pals, which is again 2 male dogs that have a male owner. Who there's one girl and she's a cat and she's kind of a bitch. And so I wrote in and I told them that, and apparently a bunch of other people did, because now there are 2 more pups. One of them's a girl, and then one of them is actually handicapped, has a little dog wheelchair thing.
Yeah,
which is super cool, right? I wrote them again and said the girl dog has a heart nose, and I hear myself saying, Ryan, you are being so fucking ridiculous. But a heart means what? It means love.
Yeah.
You're giving the one girl a thing right in the middle of her face that then still has the potential to communicate that women are objects of love. The guys don't have heart noses. Yeah, and she's smaller. And so I'm like, oh, you're so close. But you don't mean it. I can tell you're doing this to appease the angry parents who do.
To meet a quota.
Yeah. So you're checking boxes still, and I see the intention behind it. You're a bunch of dudes writing a show for dudes. Dudes is normal. Let's talk about Doc McStuffins. Main character is a girl, and she's black.
Yes.
That's the one example I have.
I know. Yep. Well, there is one. My niece used to watch it. Yeah, it's a Disney show, and I can't remember it, but it's a little black girl that is like a superhero.
Yeah, we need more of that.
Yeah, but that's it.
And curating what your kids experience, not to prevent the ones who aren't showing that type of diversity, not to teach them a lesson, but just to show your kids what is out there that does paint women as fully well-rounded whole human beings. There's no problem painting guys that way, but it's like pulling teeth to get content creators to portray women as anything other than the supporting cast.
Yeah, and I would even throw family dynamics in on this conversation. We just throw it all in. But I mean, we obviously are a different family. Not better, not worse. We are a different family. We are a family with a child that has 2 moms. The way I explain it is I like to tell my son that I grew up with one mom and 2 dads, right? Because I have a stepdad who is very much like my dad, right? But try to find a kid's book,
right,
that has a family dynamic that is not a heterosexual couple that's married.
Right.
They hardly exist.
Right.
It's.
Oh, I just remembered we have some. I'm gonna
You
post
and I have
those in
talked
the
about
show
this.
notes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You and I we've talked about this before, but it's like even that, but like, and even we get caught up in it. Like, we are that different family,
But it's
but
still
we
there.
just go out
It's
and buy
still there.
books. We
And
just
they're all
go,
guys and girls and mostly white and
Yep.
and we're still at a place where the kids' books that do exist to talk about these things are like raising awareness and like
Right.
niche diversity.
Yes.
Like this is so far
It's not
from
just
being
a story.
normalized. Right. This is a story about someone who's different.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Like, right. My sister gave me this book that's like, and I know her intention. It's this book about like loving who you are. And it does have this beautiful little black girl in the front. It is like, okay, just whatever your differences are, and I'm like, but that's just it. Like, just give me a story that's about a little girl in any color, I don't care, doing something fun. Like, why do we have to say, wow, she has curly hair, let's go ahead and like her? Like, let's just give me a story. Just give me a story.
Right. Make it. It's not even just about telling the story. You have to tell it like it's a normal story, because there are more people who fit into the non-normative category than there are who don't. The idea that white, straight, cis, hetero is normal is a myth. It just is. And that's what I think these little tiny changes can do. Little tiny tweaks in the words that you use or the words that you don't use, or the way that you approach or interact with certain forms of content that people make, and running it through these filters to see how well it portrays women as human beings. Just doing that work on your own, it will bleed into your output in ways that, I mean, depending on your personality, you may just go on the attack, and maybe you need to go on the attack. Some people need to be attacked. I mean, it's just, like, some people just need to have it screamed in their face for them to hear it. But by and large, it's just a little shift that will happen in you, and then it's a shift that will happen in what you engage with and how you engage with it, and then that little shift can translate into the things and the people that you engage with. And we're talking about kids shows and changing words around and noticing.
But those are simple things.
They're very
simple.
They're very easy to do. They're very safe, and they don't immediately threaten anybody's ideals.
Right. When somebody
they may
says
cause
to me,
them to question their ideals.
Well, that's just
on
it.
them.
When somebody says, I haven't thought about that before, or I haven't thought about it in that way, and you can tell like you've at least sparked something. Holy crap, that's like the best day ever. Like, I may not change your mind, I may not change your perspective, I may not change your conditioning, but if I've said one thing that's at least got you thinking about it, then that's a start.
The rest,
like,
it's all you, baby.
Yeah.
So there's a group. It was called the Tribe Men's Group, but now they've changed their name to Men Living. And they have like these 3 different tiers. It's like men living intentionally, men living healthy, and men living connected. And it's kind of a place for guys to go when they become aware of toxic masculinity as a thing.
Yeah.
It's like when the race relations stuff really kicked up again this year, a lot of white people got really offended at the idea that they have white privilege. But that comes from that comes from becoming aware that white privilege is even a thing, and you're wrestling with your relationship to the idea, right? And so in the same way,
triggered,
when you're
like, could I have been a part of that this whole time?
right, or some people are just like, oh, like I've known some people who like the second they heard that word, they were like, yep, I get white privilege. Okay, what do we do about it? And they just go and they just go, you know. But like, no matter how you react, there is now a thing for you to react to. And in the same way, toxic masculinity comes up a lot. And if you're a guy and you're aware that toxic masculinity is a thing, like it or not, you now have a relationship to that concept. You get to measure up how you are versus what toxic masculinity is. And you get to deal with how you measure up. And Men Living as a group to catch all those people who are looking at how they relate to what toxic masculinity is, how they're finding it in their lives, how are they feeling about the fact that it's a thing, what do they want to do about it. And I was talking to one of the leaders of the group on the phone about, not about the group, but just about this whole idea. And he started describing healthy masculinity. And he was talking about like the warrior spirit and the fire and all the things that people generally use to contrast masculinity against femininity. And I was like, well, women are warriors too. They have more warrior spirit in their pinky than most guys have in their entire body. And so everything you just used to describe masculinity is also present in healthy, fully expressed femininity. And you're also talking about masculinity in its fullest form as someone who's emotionally available and can cry in front of people and all these things that we generally, say are girly.
Yeah.
Like guys who are healthily masculine don't have a problem expressing the full range of things. And we've kind of circled on this idea that healthy masculinity and healthy femininity look exactly the same. Because they are both a picture of wholeness. And you are closed. If you're not whole, you have just been closed off to certain parts of yourself. And when you are a picture of, what our society paints masculinity should be, you're gathering your worth based on how you measure up to something, whether it's a dollar sign or a status or how many women will sleep with you or whatever. And you've been told you need to close yourself off to all these things except for anger. If you show sadness, then you're weak. If you cry, you're weak. There's even a connection between masculinity and desensitivity. Have you noticed that? I don't know if you have because you didn't grow up a dude. But let me tell you, as someone who did grow up a dude, you had to be immune to cold. If you shivered in the cold, you're a girly boy.
So physically desensitized.
You have to have a high pain threshold. If you get hurt easily, then you're girly. If you... And that's where the crying comes from, right? Then later on, if you get drunk easily, if you're a lightweight, you can't hold your liquor, you can't drink someone under the table, right? Guys are obsessed with lasting longer in bed. I talked to a lot of people about sex. Guys are the only ones who care about that, and they care about it a lot. What do you have to do to last longer? Get desensitized to it. So there's this weird idea in masculine culture that it is more masculine to be more desensitized. The less you feel, the more man points you get. And then you enter into a relationship with someone who just wants you to feel with them.
Right.
Not fix it. But can you just feel a thing? And then what's the one feeling that you've been told you're allowed to have access to? Anger. And then on the other hand, our society tells women, here are all the things you have to close yourself off to. And it's all the things that are reserved for the men. And so you're then told from an early age, you're allowed to do these things, feel these things, express these things. You're not allowed to do these because of your genitalia. Sorry. And so then becoming healthy as a man means opening yourself up to the things that society told you to close yourself off to because they were too feminine. And being healthy as a woman is to open yourself up to the things that society told you weren't allowed to have access to because those are manly. And men won't like you if you XYZ, right? And so what you're doing is you're coming back into wholeness and allowing yourself to have access to the full range of self things that you and we all were born with. And that ranges from all the masculine things to all the feminine things to the point where they're all just things.
It's incredibly hard to fight, though. I just with my son, how I have heard from family members, just toughen up. Stop your crying. Just suck it up. You need to be tougher. And I'm like, no. He needs to feel. He needs to feel. If it hurts, great. If he's sad, great. And then because he has two mothers, then all we're doing is just making him soft and sensitive. And so he's just going to get run over because he doesn't have a male in his life to teach him how to toughen up.
Isn't it funny that one of you has to wear the pants and be the man, but also he doesn't have any man influence?
Yep.
How does that work? You can't have both people.
Exactly. This is the other day. And see, now you've really got me thinking about the things that, the way that I show up, and how I contribute to misogynistic tendencies. So I had to schedule some things to be done at my house. There's some major cracks in my garage floor. So I had to have a foundation guy come out because they were a little alarming to me. We've got some pest problem going on in our garage. So I had to schedule that to come out. Well, here we are again, the housewife who's running the household calling a service industry, which is typically going to be a man service person that comes out in those foundation and pest control are typically male professions. And so when I'm scheduling this and I'm talking to the guy on the phone, I noticed that I changed the way that I talk to him. My voice drops. I talk quicker. I get more to the point. And I noticed it after I got it, because I had 2 phone calls in a row, both with men, to schedule these things to happen at my house. And I noticed I was doing it. So it's like, and here we are. I'm like, yeah. It's like how easy it is. Like I fall right into those. I'm saying this, and this is like the point I'm trying to make is how incredibly difficult it is even to make these minor shifts, because even I am so conditioned that a man does not want to hear a high pitched voice. He doesn't want to spend a lot of time with you on the phone. Get to the point, right? And just like no nonsense. Let's just get this done. And it's like, so I change who I am to make sure that this man is comfortable and we can just get on with about our business. So it's funny, like I would consider myself like, yes, I am so part of the Me Too movement, but on the other hand, it's incredibly difficult because my conditioning, like I just naturally fell into that.
Right. And that's where I'm talking about mindfulness, because then here you are noticing that, and it's the noticing that makes all the difference in the world. And that's part of what I was trying to say in our Thanksgiving episode is if you do notice that you're contributing to one of these things, don't allow yourself to turn that into shame or guilt.
Yeah.
You know, like it's so easy to be like, oh man, I just, you know, and well, okay, you know, that's a perfectly natural human response to that realization. And how many milliseconds does it take for the emotion to pass through? Like 60, some, there's a certain amount of time when your body is done expressing that discontentment. And if you hold on to it and turn it into shame, turn it into guilt and beat yourself up over it and self-loathing, well then that's your choice. You don't have to do that. That's not a physiological response anymore. Let it go. And then pat yourself on the back for the fact that you're actually noticing these things.
Right.
And then from the noticing, you know, however you're wired to go, then go do it. You know, and part of it too is like there are so many gender norms that don't even make sense.
Right.
Like when my godson was 2 or 3, young, maybe 3 or 4, somewhere around there. His grandparents on one side are extremely conservative, and we noticed that he liked playing with his sister's dolls. And so we got him for Christmas, we got him a stroller and a baby and a little like diaper and bottle and stuff.
That's what my son got for Christmas last year.
Yeah. And we knew that his grandparents were going to have a problem with it because those are for girls.
Right.
And as I brought it out, we wheeled it out to him and I said, here you go. Now you can start learning how to be a good father. And all of a sudden you could see that the gears were turning. They were like, oh yeah, guys are parents too when they have kids. That's nurturing is I guess I'm a dad. I'm nurturing. God damn it, you know. And so like you can see the thing being challenged, and basically without even saying anything to them, which by the way is a straight hetero couple with a man and a wife both participating in that misogynistic paradigm.
Right.
Then they're saying, well, yeah, I guess. I guess it doesn't make any sense for it to just be a girl toy, because we want to train everybody who wants to be a parent to grow up and nurture their babies, right? And so we didn't have to say anything. We didn't have to have a discussion. It wasn't a heated political debate where people were throwing ideologies around.
Yeah.
It was giving a kid a gift. And baked within that was an invitation to challenge the actual, even logistical validity of this social norm. And it weirdly took a lot of courage, but it was also a very easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And again, no conversations were had as a follow-up. There was no debrief, but I'm very sure that they carried that memory, and that even if neither one of them said anything about it, it's still in there. And that's all we can really do.
Exactly. Well, right. That is. Because that's,
and write
after
letters
that, it's
to the
not your
people who
business.
write your kid shows.
Yeah.
Which I also do. They hear from me.
Oh, goodness.
Anyway, I've had so many experiences lately that have gotten me just so fired up. My kid wanted to wear a dress. He's a boy. And, well, at least he's in a boy's body. And he wanted to wear a dress to school. And so we didn't have any dresses his size or at all. But we went and got one. And we said, okay, you're going to wear this to school. You want to wear a dress? You're going to wear a dress. And I alerted the teachers, like, hey, he's going to be wearing a dress. Like, you may call it a shirt, because you maybe think like it's a big shirt or whatever. Like I had these pink pants at work and everybody called them salmon because they didn't want to offend a guy by calling it pink, right? I'm like, they're fucking pink pants, right? So like even people like will change their vernacular not to comment on a guy's appearance and too far in the feminine in case. And I was like, he's wearing a dress. He knows he's wearing a dress. We know he's wearing a dress. He's wearing a dress. And they were like, cool. And then he's worn dresses to daycare since then. And if he was able to wear his Elsa dress, it's a hand-me-down from his goddaughter, so it's a little bit too long, but we got in a fight over it one morning. He really wanted to wear the Elsa dress, so we gave him a different dress. And so, like, I'm not doing it to just, like, shove it into everyone's face, and be all like, look at how woke we are. But I do want him to understand that clothing is clothing. And there's the only things that are assigned to it are things that humans assign to it. And that's a choice that we can either make or not. We can participate in it or we can not participate in it. And part of that comes down to letting him explore that, and part of it comes down to modeling it. Like I said, I am wearing literally women's clothing. I mean, it's a cardigan, right? And if I said I got it in the man section, you'd believe me, but I got it in the women's section. It's priced for women, which women's clothing sizes and prices are ridiculous. We can get into that in another episode. But I've got long dreadlocks and a man bun. I had my fingernails painted all of October. And so things like that are also things that you can do, not for the sake of making a statement, but just kind of like leaning into the fact that there's not any like set of universal binaries. Well, I guess there kind of is, but it's not nearly as cut and dry as we act. It's not nearly as normative as we think it is. And to just push those boundaries for yourself, it just kind of invites people to ask themselves why those boundaries are there in the first place.
Yeah. And my son likes to have his nails painted.
So does mine.
He does play with dolls. He likes gems and crystals and pretty rings. He picks out my jewelry for me. He picks out my clothes for me. But here's the thing. I feel like if we don't allow our kids to express themselves in a way that they want to, and this goes for anybody, not just kids, but if I say no, you can't paint your nails, then I'm basically saying no, you can't be in your true north today.
Right.
Because I'm raising a human. I don't want to raise a human with conditions. I want to raise him to be his truest self. And if right now at the age of 5, he likes green fingernails, great. Because then if we have that relationship where you have this full expression platform to just be yourself and show up as yourself, then when you come to those times where it's difficult and you're challenged, you're going to have strength and you're going to know where to come to be refueled, to go out there and continue to express yourself in the way that is true to you. And that's my whole wish as a parent, as a friend, to just support you in whatever way that is. If that means wearing dresses, then great. If that's how you're expressing yourself, I'm on board. Totally on board.
Right. And part of it too is we have this fear that our kid's going to get made fun of. Like we were like, okay, what do we do when the little boys tell them that only girls wear dresses? And you feel the need to protect them from that, but it goes back to that old quote. Some people prepare the road for their kid, and some people prepare their kid for the road.
Yep.
And part of it too is like that fear is in my head. It's not real. He has worn dresses, and the boys do not care. No, none of the girls have said anything at all. And again, it's just preschool, and they're going to get to an age where they care, and they could do some real damage, and that's a bridge that we'll cross when we get to it. But imagine if we said no, like you said with Patrick. Imagine if we said no, he's going to want that dress even more. Imagine if we said, I am a person who I want to incorporate a thing and learn what it's about and demystify it, but oftentimes the demystification is the exciting thing for me. And once I learn a craft, or at least I'm comfortable with it, sometimes I just lose interest in it altogether because all I wanted to do was know what it was like to get into it and see if it was as magical as I thought it was from the outside as someone who hadn't experienced it, right? So if he wants to paint his nails, I let him paint his nails. What if he just says, oh, that's all this is? I don't need to do that. It's a lot of work and it smells weird. And he never does it again.
Yeah.
But maybe he does. And then we learn to navigate what it's like to have a guy with painted nails. Or what if we say no? What's the one thing he's going to want to do?
Yeah.
Paint his nails.
And going back to like other kids making fun of him, it's inevitable. And you're right. I do want to protect him from that because I was made fun of, and that can be very traumatic. But I was not taught how to deal with that either.
Right.
And in all honesty, it starts now. So if he knows, because we've had a conversation about it, how to express to his friend what he's doing and why he's doing it, has he just changed that kid at a really young age where it's going to stick? So I am definitely preparing my kid for the road. And if that means it is. And it's hard because, you know, we have this added layer of like, wow, the two lesbians let their kid play with dolls and
you're representing all of gayness to the straight people.
Exactly. I'm just totally matching all your generalizations, and you know, we're turning our son gay because we're gay and we don't like men, or whatever the case is. And I'm like, that's so not it. So we constantly fight that. But still, I am not serving him if I say, no, sorry, we're lesbians, so I need you to not paint your nails because I really need you to be male so I don't get made fun of, you know, or whatever. Right.
I have two things, and I only had one thing before, but now you woke up another thing. How fucked up is it that when a woman does something, she represents all women? When queer folks do things, they represent all queer folks. When black people represent all people of color, when men do something, we represent all men. We don't realize it. We don't think about it. We're not aware of the fact that we do, but we fucking do. It's the exact same thing. And we're the only category of human being who hasn't been trained from an early age that we need to be mindful of that. Anyway, the second thing that I was going to say was I had a friend who had a kid way before I had a kid. And I was young, and the parents, they disagreed on the name, and so they came up with a middle name, kind of like my friend Darvin. But this name was like very make fun ofable. And I told him, that kid's going to get made fun of. And he looked at me. He's younger than I am. He's younger than my little sister.
Wow, okay.
And this impresses me to this day. He looked at me and he said, my kid is going to get made fun of. Not because of his name, but because kids are assholes. And your kid is going to get made fun of no matter what you name him. And this is what I'm going to name my son. And I was like, oh. Like I had to stop and think, you cannot protect your kid from getting made fun of because kids are dickheads.
So instead of trying to protect them from that and then
like you said,
letting them get hurt and never knowing how, like let's change it right now.
Like train them to deal with you getting made fun of.
To be a part of the solution. To be a part of the solution. Yeah.
Right. The end.
The end.
The end. I was going to bring up another study that I read, but it's just too much for right now. We're trying to wind down, not ramp up. I could go on for another hour about this.
I can tell.
Oh, I've been so heavy lately and so weepy and mopey and Eeyore over a bunch of crap that's going on. And I was thinking to myself, like, how am I going to bring to this episode what I need to bring into it? Because it needs passion. Like, I don't know. I feel like it'd be a disservice to the subject matter to talk about this without getting all fucking angry and shit.
That's why we're friends.
Because I'm so angry. Hashtag so angry. That's what
and you're allowed to have that feeling.
I am. With no consequence. I don't have to think about how it affects other people. It's the only emotion I have.
That's not true.
I was on a Zoom call.
I've seen you cry on a regular basis.
I cried in front of a Zoom call full of strangers yesterday. Like, I was just silent the whole time, and then the last minute I was like, I have something to say, and I was just like weepy, and it was a mess.
There you go. You're modeling it.
Modeling.
That's what you're modeling. Yep. I like it.
Well, what are you grateful for?
Oh, what am I grateful for? My babysitter. She's not anymore. I'm grateful for people that like to do things that I don't like to do. Like, I love the world. I love that the world is just like, if we were all the same, it would be incredibly boring, and I'm not sure that we would get anything done. But I met with this marketing person at the beginning of the week that had connected with me through LinkedIn, and like in the meeting, we were just like, I was kind of lamenting on the fact, like, this is why I don't get very far, because it takes me so long to do things, and I don't know the software or the platforms, and I can do it, but I don't really like it. And she's like, oh my God, I eat that stuff up. This is so refreshing. This is so refreshing. And see, I didn't want to say the universe again, because the universe ultimately is what brought me to her. Like, we connected on purpose, but it's like, all the things that I want to do. Like, I just want to produce the content. And she's like, I just want to get your content out there. I'm like, this is the perfect relationship.
What? So, you hold on to that person forever.
So I, yes, I'm paying her for her services, but I do just feel like I feel grateful. She's really passionate about what she does. She's very genuine. She works with spiritual entrepreneurs. And somebody's at my door. And so I'm grateful for people owning their expertise and loving what they do.
That is so fantastic. You're talking about a counterbalance.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you?
I am grateful for my mom. She said so many things in the last month or so that have just blown my mind to bits. She said, there is no mistake that I can make as a parent with my kids that they cannot unmake as adults.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, you have to be where you are in life and see that happening and have that realization. But how many people need to hear that? Right. See, today blew my mind again. We're talking about full moon rituals. We're talking about all the stuff that we do when the moon phases and everything. And she just posted this little article. I do. I talk about we talk about so much stuff that moms and sons just don't talk about. It's crazy. She posted this thing about the moon and how it's always a full moon.
Yep.
Like the moon is always full.
Yep.
And I never thought about that before. Like the moon phases, like the full.
Yeah,
I don't look at a new moon and think, oh, the moon's not in the sky. I know it's covered by the Earth's shadow, but I never thought about. I always pictured the moon phases as some intrinsic property of what the moon is doing, but it's just our shadow moving across its face, and that was like a new concept to me. And so I was like, oh shit, man! If I was the moon, I'd be like, I'm not only half there. And so then our relationship with the moon phase is really a relationship with our shadow. And I've been doing a lot of shadow work, and she helped me see that. She just will just say something. She'll just say something like it's nothing, like it's just a thing that everybody knows. And I'll just sit there just stuttering because I don't have words.
Your mom is intuitive. She really is.
She's so intuitive that she doesn't realize that she's intuitive.
Exactly. Like, if I said that to her, I think she'd be like, really?
She does. People tell her that, and she's like, you must have me mistaken for somebody else. Like, that's what I'm learning, is learning that you have superpowers is really more learning that other people don't. Yep. And then you're like, oh, this is
You mean this isn't normal for people?
Yeah, no, I look back at things that she did when I was a kid and think, oh, man, you were way ahead of the curve. Still is. She still is. I still learn so much from her. Yeah. It's so cool. It's so cool to watch.
She's awesome. I love that. Because what I hear you say is like you're just truly grateful for her being in her own skin, like just being her.
Yes. Yeah.
Her true north self.
And she's open. She's open with like she's my parent, and I guess when you have an adult kid, the dynamic may shift. I remember my dad being really intentional about you're an adult now. I'm no longer this. I'm this, and we're gonna he was very intentional about like reframing our role in our relationship and everything. But my mom has kind of like slowly like a color spectrum. From where she was to where she is, where now she's vulnerable. She just like wears her struggles on her sleeve with me and tells me what she's struggling with and things that she's trying or things that she's learning, or just it's very much like just a really, really, really good friend. And she just bears it all, and then she comes to me and says and invites me in and welcomes my voice and my input or my questions or and it's almost like this like both her and my personal development as individuals is a collaborative thing between us, which is just so cool. It's so cool.
I agree.
I'm just really grateful for her.
Yeah, good. She's lovely. I love her.
All right, well, you got anything else? I got nothing else. I'm all out.
We're done. Yeah,
we're done. Okay, well, until next time. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Bye. We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, you want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do, I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. And you can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
Mm-hmm. And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect.
What about the gratitude?
This one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.